A couple of weeks ago, we did this contest for Flash Fiction where people would submit little tiny short pieces of fiction set in the State of Decay universe, accompanied with screenshots to illustrate them. And we picked three winners, but people in our audience really wanted to see the huge variety of different, really interesting and cool submissions that were made. So on the last stream, Joe shared a bunch of his favorites. So I want to show a couple of my favorites too before we get on to Update 28. So let me do that real quick. To give some context, by the way, so one of the sort of the razors that we used to sort of determine who was going to make the cut for the final prizes, and versus who was just going to have made awesome honorable mention type submissions, was the question of whether the weight of the storytelling was done by the image or by the text. Because this was a flash fiction contest, we usually gave the edge to people where the most of the story was actually being told in the sentence or in the collection of sentences that they submitted. Whereas ones where it's mostly about a really amazing kick-ass screenshot that's telling the story and the words are just a caption, those tended to get voted down a little bit further. And so a lot of these, not every single one, but a lot of these that I'm sharing are ones where I absolutely loved the screenshot and the caption is very, very clever. But because enough of the weight of the story is being told by the image, I ended up sort of putting it down beneath a lot of the other ones that were a little bit more reliant on the text. So it's always very complicated when you get so many good submissions, trying to narrow them down to just a handful of winners. And so you have to come up with like rules like this to say, okay, the ones that do this are a little bit lower than the ones that do this, and eventually you come to some winners. But there are some really, really good submissions that came in that we ended up not being able to give prizes to. Starting with this one by Adam Survives. So Adam Survives wrote this little blurb. So this looks like a perfectly normal image of somebody sitting. I think this is the farmland compound, if I'm right. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. If this is the farmland compound, but it
Looks like it.
but it's got this hanging hook in the foreground. I'm like, oh, okay, that's just a normal piece of farm equipment, no big deal. But here's his flash fiction: the hanging hook softly clinking, swaying gently, awaiting the condemned. So he's kind of recontextualizing this thing. Oh, this has got a little bit of a darker purpose to it than we originally thought. So it was a great submission, Andrew. It's so reliant on this image, though, that it ended up not being the winner. But you know what? There's a lot that couldn't be the winner, and this is one that I hope you're really proud of it because we really loved it. Next on the list, this is from Bernardo Becerra, also known as La Coalición. He's one of my favorite people in our community, and he submitted this one, which, seems fairly normal. But here is the flash fiction. Too bad he never knew how good he tasted. So, when I read over the notes again that we had left, sort of like communicating over, who we were voting for and what we thought was going to win, I just wrote the word gross in all caps on this one. So I voted for it and I loved it. But at the same time, it wasn't going to win because it's just disgusting. But thank you so much for the submission, Bernardo. We really loved it. You made a lot of laughs happen over here.
Geoffrey,
Yes.
I particularly enjoy the sriracha and the barbecue sauce on the shelf behind him.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. it's the perfect touch, really. That's kind of what it takes when you're eating something you wouldn't normally. You know what? Let's move on to Brandon Nisbet. So Brandon Nisbet submitted this beautiful image of the memorial shrine that I believe is near the Church of the Ascension in Trumbull Valley. And his flash fiction was Kiara, 6 years old, blood feral, which just gets you right in the feels, right? Like that. It's a really good one. And so, yeah, so it didn't quite make the cut, but we really loved it. And we went back and forth about it. And this was always one of the ones that was like on our very short list. So well done, Brandon Nisbet. I hope that you're proud because this is a really good submission. Next, we've got this one, which is submitted by Joe. I assume some other Joe, not the Joe that we have on the stream right now, because that would not be fair if you submitted to the contest. But this one, actually, one of the reasons I liked it was because it made the exact same joke that I was making the entire last stream that I hosted, which was, so here's his story. The survivors came back with plenty of candy this Halloween. Since that's the exact same joke that I had in mind for the stream, it made me extra love this one. And actually, I realized that I probably should have used this as one of the thumbnails for the last stream, and I just forgot about it at the time that I did it. But really good submission, Joe. I was really entertained by this. And then finally, this one is by Noah Osborne. So Noah Osborne's line here is, outnumbered, surrounded, overwhelmed, 13 bullets, but it only takes one. And I just thought that was a really great turn of phrase. I really loved that one. And, you know, it's like we eventually had to have other ones, you know, rise to the top. But that one really sort of stuck with me. I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for that submission, Noah. It was really good. And I feel bad for this character who's just looking around, counting zombies, counting bullets, and saying, well, this isn't happening. And trying to figure out what they're going to do instead. There's definitely people in our community who could get out of this situation without using any bullets. But not everyone is up to that level of skill. And so, you know, you gotta take what you can get. Whew. All right, well, that's it there. So, you know, thank you again for everybody who submitted things to this contest. We really appreciate it. We can't wait until the next one we do, and we can see even more of what you folks have to offer us.